Today we're going to be taking a look at the PC performance for Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, which is available now at the time of me making this video, April 25th, 2017. I picked the game up over on CD Keys for $28, which is the Season Pass edition, which is actually the only edition of the game, which I guess comes with some sort of Season Pass, as the name would suggest, and also as the name would suggest, this is the third installment in the franchise for the Sniper Ghost Warrior series. The first two games I didn't really find to be very amazing. The first one I completed all the way through. The second one I found a lot of performance issues with that game. So I was looking forward to at least checking out Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 to see how it's running on the PC. So if anyone is out there on the fence about picking up this title, hopefully this will make their buying decision a little bit easier. And it does appear to be better optimized than Sniper Ghost Warrior 2, but it's not perfect by any means. And also as far as the gameplay is concerned, I felt it was a little bit stiff. The character models were not that great, and the graphics, while some areas like the lighting and the shaders can look pretty good, other things like the textures and the foliage, if you get really up close, does not look great at all. There was a part when I had killed a bunch of bad guys and their pants just kind of exploded with crappy textures. I really don't know what was going on there, but it happened, so I recorded it because it was funny to me at the time. So yeah, we're going to go through the performance on the game. Like I said, we're going to be testing on my GTX 1080, the RX 480, and the GTX 1060 inside of my AMD Ryzen rig with the R7, I should say, R7 1700, which is running at 4 gigahertz. For the RAM in there, I've got 16 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance at 3000 megahertz, which is technically 2933. And all of the graphics cards were overclocked. So for our NVIDIA cards, I increased the power limit slider all the way to the right as far as it would go. And on the core clock, I put an additional 200 megahertz. And for the memory, I bumped up an additional 300 megahertz. For the MSI RX 480, which I was using, I put that up to 1400 megahertz on the core and 2150 megahertz on the memory, while also pushing the power limit slider all the way to the right as far as I could. And I was running the latest drivers for both sides, 381.65 for NVIDIA, and for AMD it was 17.4.3. But let's go ahead and jump into the options menu now so you guys can get a look at the settings that I was using for my testing on the GTX 1080. I was running on the very high preset, which basically just put all of the advanced options onto very high. And for the 1060 and the RX 480, I did do my 1080 and 1440p testing at the high preset, which puts all of the options at high. And we don't have a ton of options in here. We have in-game effects, object detail, particles, physics, post-processing, shader quality, shading, and shadow. So those are the only options that we have in here in the game to be able to customize it. As far as the video options are concerned, we do have a gamma adjust, and you can put VSync on or off, as well as adjust resolution. I did find that 21:9 support did work well out of the box for actually playing the game, while the cutscenes were limited to 16:9. So you've got black bars on both sides of the screen, but actually playing the game, it did support 21:9, no issues, at 3840 by 1600, and presumably at 256 by 1080 and 3440 by 1440 as well. One thing I would have really liked to see in the graphics options or the game options would have been an FOV slider. I was not able to find one in the game options at all, and going around in this game, like even on an ultra-wide monitor, it felt like I was kind of looking through a toilet roll, like through the cardboard center on the toilet roll. That's what it felt like I was looking through playing this game, which is, kind of crappy on a first-person shooter. I would have really just liked to see an FOV slider on there. Maybe you could do a .ini or a config tweak of some sort to be able to get that working, but it wasn't in the base menus that I could see, and I really feel like this game needs an FOV slider, so maybe they could add that in later in a patch. I hope so, because right now it's really hard for me to play this game without kind of getting nauseous or getting like tunnel vision, because I pretty much feel like I'm looking down a tunnel when I'm playing this game. So let's get into the performance numbers now, where we will start off with the RX 480 and the GTX 1060, where I tested both of these cards at the high settings at 1080p and 1440p on the system that we went over earlier. So at 1080p, the RX 480 ended up pulling in an average of 74 FPS and a minimum of 65, while the GTX 1060 got an average of 66 and a minimum of 60. So both of these cards able to power this game at the high preset at 1080p, not an issue. I did also do some 1080p testing at the very high preset where the RX 480 was still able to maintain an average over 60 at 65 FPS, while the GTX 1060 fell down to 57 in regards to the average at the very high preset. So you're give or take, you're gaining about 7 to 10 FPS just going from very high down to high. So if you're struggling to maintain this game at a solid 60 frames, I would definitely look at dropping down the graphics to either high, or if you're on something lower than a 480 or a 1060, then maybe even down to medium. But for me, 1080p high was perfectly playable on both of these GPUs. For 1440p, I would say that only the RX 480 was really playable, where that got an average of 57 FPS and a minimum of 48, while the GTX 1060 fell down to an average of 42 and a minimum of 38, which is just kind of really reiterating what we saw with the 1080p testing, where we got the average of 74 and versus the 66 of the GTX 1060. So an 8 FPS difference there going between the two. So it appears that AMD is definitely running this game significantly better than the GTX 1060. I mean, we're not talking about 1 or 2 frames here that's within the margin of error. We're talking about an 8 FPS disparity. That's a pretty big jump going between these two cards, which are usually neck and neck in a lot of titles. Moving over now into the GTX 1080, which I did test on that very high preset with everything up at very high. I ended up getting an average of 92 and a minimum of 79 when testing at 1080p. And when I moved that up to 1440p, I got an average of 62 and a minimum of 56. So again, that's at the very high settings, which is why we see the averages going down below 60 FPS. So even with something like the GTX 1080, if you want to maintain, I would say, a solid 60 frames or above, you would probably want to look to either tweak a few options or just drop it down to the high preset if you want to just, make it easier on yourself. But either way, I would say that this game is playable as far as the performance is concerned. If you're running a decent spec GPU and you don't maybe mind dropping down to the high preset, and I'm not really sure that the performance hit that we're seeing is totally justified with the visuals in this title. Like I said, the lighting and shaders and stuff can be pretty good at times, but the overall graphical quality of the game, particularly the character models, I would really not say is up to scratch for a CryEngine title that is putting out the type of performance that it is on these GPUs. I mean, I think Crysis 3 actually runs better and looks a hell of a lot better than what this game is looking right now. So I'm kind of disappointed in that regard, but if you're really dead set on playing this game, then I guess you will be able to run it, although I don't feel like it's running as well as it could be. It seems like the developers maybe could have used a few more weeks or months to work on the PC optimization, which is disappointing because they had a beta where they got feedback that the performance was bad, and it doesn't really feel that they fixed it all the way right now, although the game is still playable, like I said. And as far as the gameplay is concerned, kind of stiff. If I needed to pick up a sniper game, I would really recommend people to go just play through the Sniper Elite series. I think it's far better than the Sniper Ghost Warrior series. So if you haven't played any of the Sniper Elite games, Sniper Elite V2, 3, or 4, or any of the Zombie Army trilogy from that same franchise, then I would say if you need a sniper fix, those games are way better than the Sniper Ghost Warrior games. But that's just my personal opinion. We are talking about a first-person shooter versus a third-person shooter, so, kind of take from that what you will. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. If you still want to pick up Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, I will leave a link over to cdkeys.com, which does have global keys for this game for $28 at the time of me making this video, or it's $50 on Steam. But if you get it on Steam, you've got the benefit of being able to get a refund if it doesn't work for you, or if you're just not enjoying the gameplay. So if you're not sure about the game, then I would definitely push you to go the Steam route so that you have the option for the full refund. But if you know you're going to like the game, if you've played the previous Sniper Ghost Warriors, and you know it can run on your system, then by all means, use the CD Keys link, save yourself $20, and help support the channel. But I will catch you guys next time. Ta-ra.